Your body is mine until I have my sons, Alpha King Adrian Blackwood said, and every candle in the Moonstone Temple went still. Emily Carter felt his hand close around her wrist, not painfully, but firmly enough to remind the watching nobles that he held the power here. Hundreds of wolves stood beneath the silver arches, silent beneath the weight of his claim. Emily wore white because the treaty demanded it. Adrian wore black because no one in his kingdom dared ask him to wear anything else. She lifted her chin and met his cold gray eyes. Then you had better pray your kingdom survives the price. A murmur passed through the temple. No Omega spoke to an Alpha King that way. No bride challenged her husband before the vows were complete. Yet Emily had not crossed 200 miles of winter roads to become quiet now. 3 days earlier, Silver Creek Pack had been dying. Moon fever had filled its small infirmary with coughing children and exhausted parents. The medicine shelves were bare. Snow buried the roads beneath nearly 3 feet of ice, and the pack's last supply wagon had never arrived. Emily had spent every night moving from bed to bed, cooling burning foreheads with damp cloths and whispering promises she was no longer certain she could keep. Her 12-year-old brother, Noah, had been the last to fall ill. He had tried to smile when she sat beside him. "Don't look scared, Em," he had whispered. "You're the brave one." She had turned away before he could see the tears gathering in her eyes. That same evening, her Uncle Mason had placed the royal agreement on the kitchen table. Blackwood Kingdom would send medicine, food, and enough firewood to carry Silver Creek through the winter. In return, Emily would marry the king. Not because Adrian loved her. Not because fate had chosen them. The council believed her moon healer blood could give the throne the sons it demanded. Mason had called it an honor. Emily had called it a sale. Still, she had signed. Noah needed medicine more than she needed freedom. Now, beneath the glowing dome of the temple, the royal priest handed her a ceremonial blade. Emily drew its dull edge across her palm, leaving only a thin red line, and let one drop fall onto the ancient stone. The moment it touched, pale light raced through the altar like moonlight beneath ice. The floor trembled. A forgotten symbol appeared beneath Emily's feet, a silver crescent wrapped around a crown. The nobles stepped back. Adrian released her wrist. For the first time, uncertainty crossed the Alpha King's face. High above them, the great temple bell rang by itself. Once, twice. Then a voice older than the kingdom whispered through the stone. "The throne has recognized its keeper." Emily stared at the burning mark beneath her shoes. She had entered the temple as payment for a debt. But as Adrian looked at her now, he seemed to understand the truth before anyone else did. The kingdom had not claimed Emily. Emily had just claimed the kingdom. The light beneath Emily's feet faded slowly, but the silence it left behind felt heavier than thunder. No one moved until Adrian turned toward the royal council. "Seal the temple," he ordered. "No one leaves until I know what just happened." His voice was calm, yet every noble obeyed at once. Emily watched the great doors close, shutting out the pale morning and the road that led back to Silver Creek. For one sharp moment, she thought of Noah lying beneath a wool blanket, trying to pretend he was not afraid. "The medicine," she said. Adrian looked at her. "What about it?" "Your kingdom promised medicine before the ceremony was completed." A councilman with a narrow face gave a dismissive laugh. "The bargain has changed. The altar has marked you. There are matters of greater importance now." Emily stepped off the glowing stone. "Not to me." The councilman's expression hardened, but Adrian lifted one hand before he could answer. "The wagons left before dawn," the king said. "Food, medicine, and firewood. Enough for the entire winter." Emily searched his face for deception. She found none, though she still did not trust him. "I want proof." "You will have it." Adrian turned to a guard. "Send a rider. Bring back the Silver Creek healer's written confirmation." The guard bowed and left through a side door. A murmur spread through the temple. Some were offended that an Omega had demanded an answer from the throne. Others were unsettled that the throne had answered. Emily did not care. Until Noah was safe, none of their ancient symbols meant anything. The royal priest approached the altar with trembling hands. "Your Majesty, the crescent crown has not appeared in 400 years. Then perhaps everyone should stop pretending they understand it," Adrian replied. His gaze shifted to Emily. Did your family ever speak of this, Mark? My family barely spoke of anything before my mother died. At the mention of her mother, something changed in Adrian's expression. It was small, almost hidden, but Emily saw it. Recognition, then regret. What was her name? He asked. Emily's heartbeat slowed. Lillian Carter. The priest dropped the silver bowl he was holding. It struck the stone floor with a bright ringing sound. Across the temple, 3 council members exchanged frightened looks. Emily turned toward them. You knew her. No one answered. Adrian's jaw tightened. We will discuss this somewhere private. No, Emily's voice carried farther than she expected. You brought me here in front of witnesses. You spoke of my future in front of witnesses. You can speak of my mother the same way. Before Adrian could respond, the temple doors opened again. An elderly woman stood between 2 guards, wrapped in a faded blue cloak dusted with snow. Emily's breath caught. Grandmother. Grace Carter stepped into the temple, pale but unbowed. She held a small wooden box against her chest. I tried to reach you before the ceremony, she said. Mason made certain I could not. Emily crossed the floor and took her grandmother's hands. Why are you here? Grace looked past her toward Adrian, and the kindness in her face disappeared. Because your mother did not die from illness. The entire room seemed to contract around those words. Grace opened the box. Inside lay a silver crescent pendant stained dark with age. Lillian was killed because she discovered what the council had done to the prophecy, Grace said. Then she looked directly at the Alpha King. And he was there the night they silenced her. Emily turned toward Adrian so quickly that the silver pendant slipped from Grace's fingers and swung between them. The king did not deny the accusation. That frightened her more than anger would have. How old were you? She asked. 17, Adrian answered. His voice had lost its royal distance. I was a prince with a title but no authority. Your mother discovered that the council had altered an ancient prophecy. She came to the palace seeking my father's protection. Grace's eyes narrowed. And the palace betrayed her. Yes. The single word settled over the temple like ash. Emily wanted to demand every detail, but a royal guard entered and bowed before Adrian. Your Majesty, the council requests that the bride be transferred to the eastern chambers for examination. Grace pulled Emily closer. No, the narrow-faced councilman stepped forward. The crescent mark changes everything. We must confirm that she can secure the royal line. Adrian moved between him and Emily. His expression became cold enough to silence the room. She goes nowhere with you. The succession laws require it. Then the succession laws can wait. Adrian ordered Grace to be given a protected room and escorted Emily through a private passage beneath the temple. She followed only because 4 council guards remained outside and her grandmother had whispered, "Learn what he knows." The passage opened into a quiet chamber warmed by a stone fireplace. Snow pressed white against the tall windows. Adrian entered behind her and closed the heavy door. The lock clicked. Emily reached beneath the folds of her ceremonial gown and wrapped her fingers around the small knife she had hidden there. Adrian noticed. Instead of approaching, he removed the key from the lock, crossed the room, and placed it on a table within her reach. Then he stepped back. The door is yours, he said. Why did they want to take me? The eastern chambers were built generations ago to control royal omegas under the language of duty. His jaw tightened. I have kept them closed since I became king. Emily stared at him. Yet you spoke of me as though I were property. Because the council believes possession is the only language I understand. If they think I have claimed authority over you, they cannot invoke their own. You humiliated me to protect me. I chose the fastest shield available. A shield can still wound the person beneath it. Adrian lowered his gaze. For the first time, he looked less like a king and more like a man confronting the damage of his own choices. You are right. Emily had expected excuses. The admission unsettled her. Listen carefully, he continued. Outside this room, the council must believe they cannot reach you. Inside this room, I will not touch you, command your affection, or demand anything from you. The agreement brought you here. It does not erase your will. Emily released the hidden knife but did not remove her hand from it. Then why does everyone believe you need sons before the blood moon? Adrian looked toward the snow-covered windows. Because if I have no recognized heir within 30 days, the council can declare my bloodline unstable and transfer the crown to Victor Blackwood. Your cousin. My cousin, and the man who controls half the council. Emily remembered the frightened glances after her mother's name was spoken. Was Victor involved in what happened to her? Adrian turned back slowly. I do not know. A bell rang somewhere beyond the chamber. 3 measured notes. Adrian's face hardened. But he has spent 17 years making certain I never find out. The door handle moved from the other side. Emily reached for the key. Then a man's voice came through the wood, smooth and patient. Cousin, open the door. I have come to welcome your new queen. Adrian did not move toward the door. You were not invited. Victor's quiet laugh passed through the wood. I am family. Invitations are rarely necessary. Emily watched Adrian's face become unreadable again. But now she recognized the tension beneath it. He was not afraid of Victor. He was measuring him. Open it, Emily said. Adrian looked at her. He already knows I am here. Hiding me will only make him believe I am frightened. She took the key from the table and unlocked the door herself. Victor Blackwood entered wearing a charcoal coat fastened with silver at the throat. He shared Adrian's height and pale coloring. But where Adrian's presence felt like winter stone, Victor's felt polished and carefully arranged. His smile reached everyone in the room except his eyes. Emily Carter, he said. The woman who awakened a dead symbol and unsettled an entire kingdom before breakfast. It has been a busy morning, Emily replied. Victor's smile widened. I can see why my cousin chose you. He did not choose me. The answer came from both Emily and Adrian at nearly the same moment. Victor glanced between them, amused. How interesting. Within an hour, Emily was brought to the royal presentation hall. Adrian had objected, but the council insisted that the ceremony required the kingdom's witnesses. The hall stretched nearly 100 feet beneath a painted ceiling of moons and wolves. Noble families lined the walls in dark formal clothes, watching Emily as if she were a question they intended to solve. She wore the same white dress from the temple. She refused the jeweled cloak offered by the attendants. Let them see the woman Silver Creek had sent, not the ornament the court wanted to create. A noblewoman near the front whispered loudly, "She looks more like a village nurse than a queen." Another answered, "Perhaps that is all she was purchased to be." Emily kept walking. Shame had followed her for years. It no longer knew how to make her bow. Victor stepped onto the raised platform beside the council. Before the royal union can be recognized, he announced, the bride must complete the traditional examination and prove her ability to continue the Blackwood line. The room went still. Emily stopped at the foot of the platform. No, Victor tilted his head. You misunderstand. This is not a request. Then you misunderstand me. My answer remains no. 2 guards shifted forward, but Adrian descended from the royal dais and stood beside Emily. No one will examine her. Before Victor could respond, a small boy carrying a tray of crystal cups stumbled near the front row. The tray slipped from his hands. He sank to the floor, pale and shaking. The nobles stepped away from him. Emily did the opposite. She dropped to her knees and pressed 2 fingers to the boy's wrist. His pulse fluttered beneath her touch. He needs air, she said. Move back. No one obeyed until Adrian turned toward the crowd. You heard her. Space opened at once. Emily placed her palms over the boy's chest and closed her eyes. Warmth gathered beneath her skin, faint at first, then bright enough to shine through her fingers. The boy's breathing steadied. Color slowly returned to his face. When his eyes opened, Emily released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Adrian stood between her and the council while the entire hall stared. No one touches her, he said, and this time there was no language of duty, bloodlines, or ownership. Only protection. Samuel Reed, the royal physician, knelt beside the fallen tray and lifted one unbroken cup. He smelled the dark liquid, then looked sharply toward Adrian. Your Majesty, this was not meant for the child. Victor's smile disappeared. Samuel rose, holding the cup with both hands. It was prepared for you. The royal hall emptied under Adrian's command, but fear remained behind like smoke. Samuel carried the poisoned cup to his laboratory while the guards searched every corridor, every kitchen, and every servant's room. Victor offered his assistance with perfect courtesy, then disappeared before anyone could question him. Emily stayed with the young servant until his breathing became steady. His name was Thomas. He was only 9 years old, and he kept apologizing for dropping the tray. "You saved a king without even knowing it," Emily told him softly. "There is nothing to apologize for." Adrian heard her. The distance in his gray eyes shifted, but before he could speak, a warning bell rang from the western tower. Then another answered from the courtyard. The palace doors slammed shut. Voices rushed through the halls. Someone had entered the royal grounds using a council seal. Adrian ordered Emily to remain with Samuel, but the lights suddenly went dark. A low sound rolled through the corridor, deeper than thunder and filled with pain. Adrian gripped the stone arch beside him. His shoulders tightened, and his breath came unevenly. "Leave," he told Emily. Samuel went pale. The poison was not only in the cup. Something in the hall must have awakened the curse. Adrian stumbled away from them, fighting for control. The guards backed toward the walls as shadows gathered around him. Emily could feel his suffering before she understood it. It pressed against her chest, cold and endless, as though another heartbeat had begun inside her. Adrian reached the open courtyard and fell beneath the snow. A great black wolf rose where the king had been, surrounded by dark mist and trembling with restrained power. No one approached him. The guards lowered their eyes. Samuel whispered that the curse made Adrian unable to recognize friend from enemy. Emily remembered the locked room, the key placed within her reach, and the promise he had made when no witnesses were present. She stepped into the courtyard. "Emily, stop," Samuel warned. The wolf turned toward her. His silver eyes burned through the darkness. Emily's fear told her to run, but beneath the growl she heard something else. Not anger. A plea. She walked across the snow until only a few feet separated them. "I do not belong to you," she said, keeping her voice steady. "But tonight, I will not let you face this alone." The wolf lowered his head slightly. Emily raised one hand and waited. She did not touch him until he moved forward by his own choice. Her palm rested against the thick fur above his brow. Warm light flowed from her fingers, gentle as sunrise through winter clouds. The shadows around him loosened. His breathing slowed. Then a silver thread appeared between them, bright enough to reflect across the snow. Emily felt his loneliness, his guilt, and years of silent fear. Adrian felt her grief for Silver Creek, her love for Noah, and the fierce promise she had made never to surrender herself again. The bond opened wider. A memory pulled Emily through it. She saw a younger Adrian standing in a candlelit chamber, while Lillian Carter argued with members of the royal council. Lillian held the same crescent pendant Grace had brought to the temple. She warned them that the prophecy had been rewritten. Then Victor stepped from the shadows beside the old king. He was smiling. The memory shattered. Emily fell back into the snowy courtyard as Adrian returned to human form beneath a cloak Samuel placed around his shoulders. His hand reached toward her, then stopped before making contact. Even weakened, he refused to take what she had not offered. Emily stared at him, shaken by what the bond had revealed. "Victor was there," she whispered. Adrian's face went still. Emily closed her fingers around the fading silver thread between them. "He knew my mother." The memory left Emily colder than the snow beneath her feet. Adrian rose slowly, his face pale from the curse, but his eyes were clear. "Tell me exactly what you saw." Emily described the candlelit chamber, her mother's crescent pendant, and Victor standing beside the old king while the council argued over the prophecy. Adrian listened without interruption. When she finished, he looked toward the palace windows as though 17 years of suspicion had finally taken shape. "There is one place Victor cannot easily erase," he said. "The first kings stored their records beneath the western chapel." Samuel urged Adrian to rest, but Adrian refused. Before dawn, he and Emily entered a narrow stairway hidden behind an old stone altar. The passage descended nearly 60 feet beneath the palace, where the air smelled of dust, cedar, and extinguished candles. Adrian carried a lantern. Emily carried her mother's pendant. Its silver surface grew warmer with every step. At the bottom they found a circular vault sealed by a carving of the crescent crown. Adrian pressed his royal ring against the stone. Nothing happened. Emily lifted the pendant beside it. The door opened without a sound. Inside were shelves filled with leather-bound records, sealed letters, and scrolls wrapped in faded blue ribbon. Emily's pendant pulled gently toward a small cedar box resting beneath a layer of dust. Inside lay two versions of the same prophecy. The public version declared that the Blackwood line would fall unless the king produced sons before the blood moon. The older version said something entirely different. The kingdom would endure only when its ruler was freely chosen by the keeper of the crescent light. No child was mentioned. No forced union. No claim of ownership. Only choice. Emily read the final sentence twice. They changed it. Adrian's voice was quiet. They built generations of law around a lie. Beneath the scroll, Emily found a letter written in her mother's hand. Lillian had discovered the alteration and planned to reveal it before the United Pax. She had also named Victor's father and several council members as the men responsible. Victor had inherited more than ambition. He had inherited their secret. Adrian closed his eyes. My father told me your mother was a traitor. And you believed him. I was young enough to obey and old enough to know better. Emily heard the shame in his voice, but she did not offer comfort. Forgiveness could not be demanded simply because regret had arrived. What happens now? She asked. Adrian looked at the original scroll. We place this before every pack leader. The council loses its authority, and Victor loses his path to the throne. A soft click sounded behind them. The vault door began to close. Adrian caught it before it sealed, and they returned to the upper corridor to find a royal messenger waiting beside Samuel. The man held a folded note tied with a strip of blue cloth Emily recognized immediately. It belonged to Noah's winter coat. Her hands went numb. Samuel read the message first, then passed it to Adrian. Victor had taken Noah from Silver Creek before the royal medicine arrived. He demanded the original prophecy and Adrian's public surrender of the crown. At the bottom, one sentence had been written for Emily alone. Come without an army, or your brother will never see home again. Emily folded the note with steady fingers, though her heart was breaking. He thinks Noah makes me weak. Adrian watched her carefully. Does he? Emily placed her mother's letter inside her cloak and lifted her chin. No. He makes me certain. Emily left the palace before sunrise with the original prophecy hidden beneath her cloak. She had told Adrian nothing of her plan, because she knew he would follow, and Victor had demanded that she come alone. The meeting place was an abandoned assembly hall 10 miles north of the capital, where the United Pax had once gathered to renew their vows of peace. Snow covered the broken steps, but torchlight glowed behind the tall windows. Inside, Noah stood beside Victor, frightened but unharmed. Emily's heart pulled toward him, yet she forced herself to remain still. Let him go, she said. Victor smiled from the center of the hall. Around him stood council members, noble witnesses, and representatives from 6 powerful packs. He had not arranged a private exchange. He had built a trial. First, they deserve to hear what their king has done, Victor replied. He lifted a written account of the marriage ceremony and repeated Adrian's public claim before the gathered leaders. Whispers traveled through the room. He purchased an omega from a dying pack, Victor continued. He called her his property, and now he expects you to believe he represents justice. Emily felt every eye turn toward her. The old shame tried to rise, but she remembered the key Adrian had placed within her reach and the way he had stopped his hand before touching her in the courtyard. Adrian was wrong, she said clearly. But unlike this council, he admitted it. Victor's expression tightened. Give me the prophecy. Emily held up the scroll. Release Noah first. Before Victor could answer, the doors opened. Adrian entered without guards, armor, or royal banners. He wore only a dark winter coat and carried the Blackwood crown in both hands. Emily's breath caught. I told you not to come, she said. You told me nothing, Adrian answered. His gaze moved to Noah, then returned to Victor. Let them leave. Victor pointed toward the stone platform. The crown first. Adrian walked forward and placed it at Victor's feet. A shocked murmur filled the hall. You would surrender the kingdom for one Omega and a child? Victor asked. Adrian looked at Emily. I would surrender a throne built upon a lie. For the first time, Victor's confidence faltered. Emily saw Noah's hands bound with ceremonial cord, and she noticed the same cord around her own wrist had been tied carelessly. She turned her palm upward. Moonlight gathered beneath her skin, soft and silver. The knot loosened. Then Noah's did the same. He ran to her and she pulled him close. Victor stepped back toward the platform and pressed his hand against an ancient council seal. A hidden mechanism clicked above them. Samuel's warning flashed through Emily's mind. Silver. She saw a narrow ceremonial bolt release from the wall, aimed toward Adrian. Emily lifted both hands. A shield of pale light formed between them. The bolt struck the light and fell harmlessly to the floor, but the impact sent a cold wave through the bond. Adrian staggered. The curse answered the silver's presence, darkening the air around him. Emily reached him before he fell. Stay with me, she whispered. Adrian's eyes found hers, unfocused but trusting. Across the hall, the original prophecy slipped from Emily's cloak and opened across the stone floor. The crescent crown symbol blazed above its words. Every pack leader saw the truth at once. Victor had wanted the kingdom to witness Adrian's disgrace. Instead, they watched their king give up power, and they watched an Omega choose to stand beside him. Emily knelt beside Adrian as the dark mist gathered around his shoulders. The curse pressed against their bond like winter wind, cold and relentless, but she did not release his hand. Look at me, she said. His silver eyes opened slowly. Around them, the pack leaders stood frozen while the ancient prophecy glowed across the stone floor. Victor moved toward the scroll, but two elders stepped into his path. For the first time, the council no longer obeyed him. Emily placed one palm over Adrian's heart, and the other against the crescent pendant at her throat. Warm light flowed through her hands, not as a command but as an invitation. The bond answered. Adrian's breathing steadied. The shadows loosened and faded into the morning air. When he finally sat upright, Emily felt the entire hall release one breath. Noah remained close beside her, his small hand gripping the edge of her cloak. Read it aloud, Emily said. An elder from the Northern Ridge pack lifted the original prophecy. His voice carried through the assembly hall as he spoke of a ruler freely chosen by the keeper of the crescent light. There was no demand for sons. No permission to control an Omega. No law granting the throne ownership over another person. When the final words were read, silence fell. Emily stood and faced the council. My mother discovered this truth 17 years ago. She tried to protect every Omega who would have been trapped beneath a false law. Grace's letter was passed among the pack leaders. The names inside it matched the seals on the altered records. Victor's expression remained calm, but the room had already turned against him. Adrian rose without reaching for the crown at Victor's feet. Remove him from the council, he ordered. He will answer before representatives from every pack, not before judges chosen by his allies. Victor looked at Emily. You believe this changes what the king said to you? No, she answered. It proves that no crown can excuse it. Adrian accepted the words without defense. Before the gathered packs, he removed the silver marriage band from Emily's wrist. His hands were careful, and he stepped away the moment it was free. The agreement is ended, he said. Silver Creek will keep the medicine, food, and protection already promised. Emily Carter owes this throne nothing. A murmur spread through the hall. Adrian turned toward the elders. Every law that permits forced marriage, confinement, or control of an Omega under the excuse of succession is revoked. Any future union of the crown must be entered freely, or it will not be recognized. Then he faced Emily. The authority left his voice. I spoke as though your body could belong to me. I was wrong. No throne, prophecy, or bond gives me that right. Emily looked at the man who had surrendered a kingdom for her freedom, and still understood that sacrifice did not purchase forgiveness. My body was never yours, she said. But my heart may choose you one day, if you become worthy of that choice. Adrian lowered his head. He did not ask when. He did not ask her to stay. By sunset, Victor was under guard. The false laws were sealed for destruction, and Noah was safe beside Grace. Emily prepared to return to Silver Creek. From the palace steps, Adrian watched her carriage waiting beneath the falling snow. He had given her freedom. Now he believed freedom meant she would leave him behind. 3 months later, Silver Creek no longer smelled of sickness. Smoke rose from repaired chimneys, children raced between the pine trees, and the infirmary shelves stood full for the first time in years. Emily had returned as neither sacrifice nor royal bride. She returned as the moon healer who had exposed a lie and reminded every pack that dignity could not be traded for power. With Grace beside her and Noah healthy again, she rebuilt the village one promise at a time. Far away, Adrian refused to reclaim the crown until the United Packs created new laws limiting royal authority. He opened the council to omegas, healers, farmers, and pack members who had never been allowed to speak. He kept every promise to Silver Creek, but he sent Emily no letters asking for forgiveness. He understood that patience was part of becoming worthy. On the first warm morning of spring, Emily found him standing at the edge of the village without guards, banners, or a royal coat. He wore a simple dark jacket, and in his hands rested the crescent pendant that had belonged to her mother. "This was recovered from the council vault," he said. "It should have come home long ago." Emily accepted it carefully. "Did you come all this way only to return a necklace?" Adrian looked toward the village, where Noah was laughing with Thomas near the newly built schoolhouse. "I came to see what freedom looked like when it was allowed to grow." He did not ask her to leave with him. He did not mention the bond that still warmed whenever they stood close. He only bowed his head and turned toward the road. Emily watched him take several steps before calling his name. Adrian stopped. She crossed the distance between them and placed her hand in his by her own choice. That evening, before Grace, Noah, and representatives from every allied pack, Emily chose Adrian as her mate. She agreed to stand beside him only as an equal, and he accepted without condition. Together they returned to Blackwood, not as ruler and possession, but as two leaders bound by trust. Years later, Adrian knelt beside Emily in the palace garden, while their 2 young sons slept beneath a shaded tree. He rested one hand gently over hers and whispered, "My sons." Emily raised an eyebrow, and the old king immediately understood his mistake. She smiled and covered his hand with her own. "They are not your sons, Adrian." His expression softened. "No," he said. "They are ours." Above them, the crescent crown appeared faintly in the afternoon sky, not as a command from destiny, but as a blessing upon the choice they had made together.